the Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network presents Worldview Media Podcast, where Gordon and Joyce Runyon view popular media through the lens of the biblical five-point covenant model to help believers appreciate and apply principles of exciting narrative and engaging storytelling.
Hello again, and welcome to Worldview Media Podcast. I'm your host, Gordon Runyon, and with me in the studio today is a young woman who has educated many men on the folly of standing in her way. This is my wife, Joyce. Hello.
Hello.
We're reviewing the movie True Grit today.
Yes. And Western.
A Western. In our ever-expanding category, genres, we've come to a classic John Wayne Western, and I have to admit, I think it's been since the 70s since I saw it. I don't know, have you ever seen it?
No, that was my first time to see the movie. There are a few genres I don't really see, Westerns being one of them. So.
All right, so you were not very enthusiastic about seeing this movie then. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And now that we have seen it, how do you feel about it?
Well, it wasn't a bad movie. I think for the time frame that it was done, it was really done pretty well. You know, I think what took me by surprise, a lot of it was with the casting, because you had the parents on the little farm. Well, the little farm, I guess it was a large property. But in today's casting, that dad would have been like the grandpa. And the mom would have been probably like the grandma instead of the mom of an infant and an older daughter and probably an elementary child. So I was just kind of like, okay, this is a little bit different. Well, it was a different time with casting, so.
Did you notice the casting of Glenn Campbell?
I did.
At the height of his career?
I did, and I was a little surprised at how everything turned out.
Right. So Glenn Campbell played a Texas Ranger named Le Beefcake.
Le Beef?
Le Beefcake. And
I don't know if there's any cake on that, was there?
Well, you know, it's Glenn Campbell. He's at the height of his career. He's a good-looking guy, and there he is. That's what I suspected.
Ah, I see.
That's why he got the nod for the part.
Could have been.
So, in this movie, John Wayne plays a federal marshal named Rooster Cogburn, and the lead female part is a teenage girl named Maddie, and her father is murdered early in the picture. And Maddie sets out on a quest to get justice for her father and make sure that the killer gets what's coming to him.
Yeah. Specifically,
she wants to see him hanged.
Yeah.
And so she decides that the course of action for her, the right move, is for her to find a man with true grit who can lead her into the Indian territories and find this bad guy.
Because that's where all the bad guys go. They go to the Indian territories.
Right. Now, this Maddie girl, it'll be important later. She's an interesting character. I noticed in the summary of the movie that it called her a tomboy. And I don't think that was true. There was nothing. She wasn't dressing like a boy.
No.
She wasn't doing boy things.
No.
But what she was, and maybe it was tomboyish in the 70s, she's very assertive, and she won't take no for an answer. She has a plan.
Yeah.
She's not afraid of men, and she'll tell them to their faces when they're acting like beasts or acting less than they should. And
she definitely does call them on questionable behavior.
Yeah, she won't put up with it, and she won't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
I respected her character. I was really kind of impressed with the character in that she had a plan and she thought strategically about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't try to compete in a man's world, so to speak,
Yeah.
with physical force or threats of that or anything, but she
Well,
figured out ways.
And in the same vein, she wasn't using feminine wiles to
Yeah.
have people succumb to her will. You'll
No,
do this
right.
for me because look at me. I'm,
Right.
she's really a plain girl, but she's very honest.
Yeah.
She's very honest.
Very straightforward, and like I say, she was very persistent, and
Yes.
men tried to get rid of her, and she just wouldn't be gotten rid of, and until they finally realized it's going to be more of a headache to keep dealing with her than it is to
Just let her come along.
give her what she wants.
Yeah.
So, if you had to overall grade the movie, is it a thing that you would recommend to somebody, or?
Yeah, I think I'd probably give it like a B+.
That's probably way better than what you were thinking you were going to grade it. Though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I think so. And I think some of that is just, I think when I think of Western, it's just a bunch of cowboys and doing cowboy things, and I just really don't, that's not me. And this really, it was a Western, but it really was more, that was the setting of it. It was Western in the setting, but it was really a story about justice.
Right, the quest for justice.
And so, how do you... It wasn't really a Western in that way. It was Western in that it was set in that setting. They had marshals. There wasn't really a lot of cowboys,
Right.
There were the bad cowboys, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think, for me, I had a problem with just the Maddie being that character in that time frame. I saw that as really unlikely.
Really?
That she would be the one going to take care of all this stuff instead of her mom being the one to come and take care of all this stuff, and she'd be the one left at home to take care of the kids and everything else. So for me, that was a little bit far-fetched. I don't see in my own circumstance that I would have sent any of my daughters out to take care of this business. It would have been something that I had done myself, and they'd be taking care of whatever needed to be done at home.
Yeah, but they kind of, in their defense, they kind of did set that up in portraying her as basically running the business of the ranch. She might not
She
have
knew
been
a
out
lot
there.
of information, and she probably kept up with money and stuff like that. But it just, to me,
Yeah, I
it
get
seemed
it.
a little unfeasible for
Right.
a teenage girl in that era
Yeah.
to go out and say, you're not going to mess with me, you're not going to take advantage of me, you're not going to do
Right.
these things, and period. And
Right.
so that just, very unlikely. I've had teenage daughters.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can agree with some of that, but I thought for the character that she was and doing what she was doing, I was really surprised, I guess, by how much I enjoyed the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I know I did see it when I was a little guy,
Yeah.
and it was maybe 6 or 7 or something, but I didn't remember much about it except the snake pit in Will. That did scare me.
Well, yeah.
Right.
We live in rattlesnake country.
Right. Okay, so I think we both probably were pleasantly surprised, enjoyed it more than we thought we would. I was counting on it being a pretty good movie, but didn't remember it enough to anticipate anything. So, but I was surprised like you were. All right, so let's take our break and we'll come back and we'll focus on running true grit through the meat grinder of the biblical covenant and seeing what kind of sausage we wind up with at the end.
The Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network brings to you a complete lineup of podcasts where you will hear practical and tactical theology. Our desire is not simply that you consume our shows, but that you also live out your faith in every area of life. We can talk all day long about these things, but if we fail to put them into practice, then we fail as ambassadors of Jesus Christ our King. Subscribe now to your favorite Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network shows, or you can subscribe to the Reconstructionist Radio Master Feed, where all of the content we produce, including the audiobooks and audio articles, will pop up as soon as they are available. And don't forget to visit ReconstructionistRadio.com to volunteer as a narrator or to partner with this ministry financially. May the Holy Spirit stir you into action for Christ and His kingdom.
And we're back, and we're talking about true grit and the 5-point biblical covenant. I actually woke up a night after we had watched this, and just in the middle of the night, woke up and my head was filled with the thought that, man, there's a lot of worldview material in that True Grit movie that I wasn't really expecting. Now, the 5-point biblical covenant, we use that as a lens to uncover what sort of worldview is being preached in the media that we're looking at. And I haven't said this in a while, but if you're listening to this and you're not familiar with the 5-point biblical covenant, I'd recommend you get a book by Ray Sutton called That You May Prosper, Dominion by Covenant. And that's the major book that will unlock your understanding of what we're doing here and why we think the biblical covenant model is important. So anyway, the first point in that covenant is transcendence, where we talk about who is ultimately in charge. We can ask questions like, how are characters redeemed? Who is the creator? Who's the ultimate lawgiver? And to be honest, I will just say I didn't think there was a lot of explicit stuff about transcendence here.
Yeah.
But the way the covenant works, the second point then is representation, and we ask who represents the transcendent power. And I think what we have then with the girl Maddie, she's such a representation of the transcendence in the movie that by looking at her, I think we can get a glimpse of what's going on transcendence-wise. So I don't know if you had any thoughts about transcendence or anything occur to you.
I thought maybe a little bit with the judge, the hanging judge, in that he was, he always passed a sentence, and then he always made sure he was there to see that the sentence was carried out in the best manner possible. And so he was the one that kind of determined what the punishment was, if it was appropriate, that the charges brought up against these people were valid. And so he's not a big character in the,
right.
But I kind of saw him as the person that's dealing out the law, who should know what the law is. And then, of course, Rooster, he he's an arm of the transcendent power.
Oh, okay.
But he dances kind of on the line.
Sure.
He's not as straight shooting as maybe some other deputies might be, and I think we see that comparison between the Texas Ranger and him when he comes in, and he's like, maybe that's not quite right, and he's like, I'll do it my way. I'll get the job done. And so you see that interplay between the one who's like, this is the right way to do it, and he's like, well, this is another way to get the same thing done. Maybe it's not quite exactly as right as what you want to do, but it'll have the same accomplishment.
Right. Well, the thing that impressed me about Maddie, you kind of started talking about representation there, and there were several things about her that I thought pointed to transcendence. And the first thing that struck me was that she really did have this idea that everything is created for a purpose. And the little innocuous way that comes around is that she really blamed Rooster's cat, the general, for being lazy and not taking care of the rat problem and stuff. When she was putting them outside, she said, that's your job, and you're failing at that. And in the same way, that's kind of how she approached all the rest of the characters. You know, the marshal's job is to do this, and she wasn't scared to tell him, this is your duty and you're failing at it. And I'm not going to let you fail at it. I'm going to hound you until you do what you're supposed to do, which points to a transcendence. If the cat has a duty and the marshal has a duty, and she, as the relative of the murdered man, she has a duty to make sure justice is done, that kind of points to a transcendence and an orderliness to all things.
It's not just the things that are a duty. You know, she was, I think she quoted scripture and was saying, you know, you shouldn't be doing this. And with the drinking and with gambling and playing cards and doing things that are inappropriate, she calls all that out. But it's not just, this is what your duty is. It's, you know, you're doing things that are wrong.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, but I think that when she had to get a hold of a man and get him to do the right thing, she generally grabbed at the duty that he was under, you know, and that's how that was her end. You have a duty to do this.
Well, yeah, but then her other thing was that, okay, that's your duty, but I'm going to pay you to make sure we get this done.
Right.
And because I'm paying you, you'll do it the way I want it done.
Yeah, that was the other thing. Once she paid, because she didn't trust the officers of the law to do what they were supposed to do just because they were supposed to do it. And she basically then hired them to do their job. And anybody else that she paid money to, man, she expected, I paid you for this, and you're going to do this.
Yeah.
And,
well, and then it put it in her terms.
Yeah.
You know, this is a contract between us, and she was really big. You signed this. This is our agreement. I'll do this for you. You do this for me, and you signed this saying that this is what we've agreed to.
Right. And that's how she got things done. Like I say, she was kind of in a rough and tumble world with cowboys that some of them had just as soon spit on you as talk to you or shoot you or whatever. And she didn't resort to those sorts of tactics, but she found ways that were upright and honorable in order to press her case. And
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
But still, in my mind, for a teenage girl to do that.
Oh, she was extraordinary,
Is far-fetched.
Okay.
Unrealistic. Not likely.
All right. The other thing that got me is in dealing with the Marshal Rooster, John Wayne's character, and then the Texas Ranger, Glenn Campbell's character, she didn't just trust them to do the right thing, as we've already mentioned. And to me, that's a lesson that conservative Christians need to learn. Because she didn't have this idea that just because she was dealing with men who had badges and had been sworn in, she had no illusion that they were somehow not fallen, sinful men who could just be trusted because they had a badge and a gun. And that never crossed her mind. She was going to stay on them and make sure that they did what they were supposed to do. And she wanted to make sure that this man was brought to justice. And for her, justice was to come before a judge, to have to confess his crimes, and then to be punished for them. Yeah. You know, that's what she wanted. She didn't just want this man killed. She wanted justice, and justice was the whole concept. And that's why she's going, and that's why she's paying for it, and that's why she's not going to let up on him, because she wants it done her way. Yeah, but she didn't trust it was going to happen at all. Unlike many conservative Christians today who think just because a man has a badge and a gun, it means that he's automatically honorable.
Someone trustworthy.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to point 2, where we talk about ethics and what were the moral dilemmas or ethical concerns that were displayed here.
Well, you know, it goes back with, what do you do about her dad being shot and killed for trying to help a guy?
Yeah, right. So do you think that she was after revenge, or was she after justice?
It's justice.
What makes you say that?
Because she could have hired anybody to go in and just kill the guy.
Yeah.
That's not what she wanted.
Oh, okay.
She didn't want him just dead.
Right. She wanted him to come face the trial. Yeah.
She wanted to have him be condemned for what he had done, not just someone shoot him and call it over.
Yeah, I think that's right. I would say the same thing. It reminded me a little bit of the law of the Bible makes a provision for cities of refuge in a couple of different places, and the city of refuge was where someone who had killed a man but was contending it was manslaughter and not murder.
Yeah.
You could flee to the city and be safe within its boundaries until the trial happened and all of that. But it mentions, at least in Numbers 35, that the one that's coming after him and might kill him is called the Avenger of Blood, or the Blood Avenger. And I did some looking on that, and there's some speculation among the commentators that what that points to is that, like, the next of kin had the right of redemption for a piece of property. And they believe that back in the ancient world, it was fairly common practice that if a man was murdered, the next of kin had the right of revenge and could actually be the one to go and put the guy to death. And I kind of see some of that going on here. You know, I agree with you. I think Maddie was more into justice than she was into revenge. But here she is as, you know, next of kin, close relative at least, of the man that was killed, and she's out chasing him and making sure he doesn't get away with it, you know.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought, I'd mentioned how it was advertised as her being a tomboy, and I didn't think that was right. And it strikes me that here we have this very strong female lead character, but she's decent and she's honorable, and she's not descending to anybody's level in order to get in their world, you know. And it strikes me that in modern feminism, and I didn't come up with this, but I think it's funny and it's accurate. The two leading tenets of modern feminism seem to be, one, all men are pigs, and two, women should be treated like men, and women should become like men. And this Maddie, I think she was a feminist in the highest sense of the word, that she wasn't trying to be a man, and she wasn't ashamed of being a woman, but she wasn't going to take any credit off anybody either, you know, and didn't descend to, she never dishonored herself in any way, even though she was tough, and really she was looking for a man with true grit. But I think part of the point of the show is that she had true grit, and she was the one that was pressing on and not taking no for an answer and all that. So I thought she represented kind of a genuine sort of feminism in that way.
Yeah, I could agree with that. But, you know, I think just the term feminism...
It bugs you.
Yeah, and people get this picture in their mind of what that is, and it's distorted. You know, I think in the Bible, in Scripture, God says there's not male or female anymore, and so there's no disparaging place for a woman within God's family. You're not less than, you're not more than. I think you've said, you know, it's all level at the foot of the cross, and you don't have to say you're worthwhile or you're worthy or you need to respect me, because it's just not necessary.
Because that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I get you. I don't use the term feminism regularly. I just felt like Maddie herself was, if we're going to have feminists, this is how they ought to be, you know, in terms of...
Well, and she's just an unusual character all the way around, because I don't I don't see her mom being like that in the little brief vignette we have with the mom there. The other lady in the picture, I think, is the boarding house lady, and she's certainly not the same type of character.
Right.
She's very unusual. Very unusual.
Right. Okay, anything else under ethics that you had?
I think when Maddie's taken by the gang, and they've had this girl that's just driven them crazy, and the guy tells them, you have to leave her here with me or I'll kill her. And she's thinking, well, they're not going to leave me, and then they do. And I think she was really, I think that really kind of threw her for a loop, like, well, now what? Here I am in the middle of nowhere with all these bad people, and now what's going to become of me? And so I think that was a shocking place where she found herself in, because she had been in control fairly much for the whole, for the whole ride. And here, things have gotten out of control, and she's nowhere where she thought she was going to be.
Right. Okay, so we come to point 4 and its sanctions, and we ask the question, do our characters kind of get what they deserve? And this is where we might talk about things like character arcs. Do we see growth in characters, or do we see redemption happen for them or anything? The bad guys all get what they deserve, right? They all wind up dead.
I believe that's correct.
Maddie gets what she was looking for, the justice that she was after.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's obvious it was a personal thing. She wasn't disinterested. She had a personal interest in.
Yeah.
And so she finds some closure there, to use the modern term. Revenge never satisfies, but I think the final scene with her, you can see that she's still the same person she was before, so it's not like she's now freaked out because she's still angry or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
And then, now Glenn Campbell's character was the lawman who turned out to be a pretty decent guy, even though it was questionable at times. And he winds up kind of giving his life in order to save her and Rooster from the snake pit.
Yeah.
Or anyway, he winds up dead. Let's say that.
He winds up dead, which I was really surprised that he really wound up dead. That surprised me.
Almost thought, well, he'll get better.
Well, they'll go back and get him and he'll be fine. But, I guess those were bad times to have your head cracked open or something. Right. So.
And I almost thought, well, he's still as a guy who lives by the sword, it shouldn't be surprising if you wind up dying by the sword,
Well, yeah, I guess.
As a general rule.
Yeah.
You have exceptions like King David, who lived a long life and died naturally, but generally speaking, if you're going to live a violent sort of life, it shouldn't shock you if that winds up taking its toll at the end.
Yeah.
The only other one to talk about then is Rooster Cogburn. And sanctions in dealing with him, not so clear, I think. Did you see any kind of character arc with him?
I think this girl changed him.
Was it a gradual change that you saw through the movie?
I think it was. I think at first she just irritated him.
Right. Oh, sure.
And then, okay, this kid's got money, and I'm going to do this anyway, so sure, I'll let you pay me. And he agreed, yeah, you can come with me. And then it was a lawman that said, no, she can't come. She's an irritating child. We can't have her here. But, of course, she'd already paid. They had the contract. She was going to be there one way or another. But you see that with, they just didn't leave her, which she thought they had. They circled back, came around, and rescued her twice at least, because then she fell in the snake pit, and they got her out again and bit by the snake, and rushes her out of there, does what he can, make sure she's okay.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he gets a bonus. He gets paid a little bit more.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And goes out. The ending scene is him going out to her property, and they're talking at the area where her dad's buried, and she says, okay, well, my brother's going to be over here, and my little sister, this is their spot, and my mom's going to be over here, and I'm going to be here by my dad, and I want you over here by me. And so he's like, what? You want me here over by you? And so there was a shift in, I think, how they looked at each other because of what they'd gone through. And just, I think she was a wake-up call for him in a lot of ways. Someone who'd say, you need to not drink. You need to be responsible. You need to take care of yourself. You need to...
Or drink in moderation.
Yeah, moderation, yes. That's probably more what she said. But there were, he had to think about some things that he hadn't thought about in a long time, and that people just probably didn't call him on either.
Right. He's too scary.
Yeah, he does whatever he wants to,
Right.
and you're crazy if you tell him otherwise. But yeah, so there was some change in him, and he even admits during the story that he's done some bad stuff himself. Got ran out of a couple different territories and states, and he didn't understand why they were upset with him to begin with, and then he starts working for the law. So he's a card.
Yeah.
Rooster is, but I think at the end, he's not as rough around the edges as maybe he had been.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. There's definitely some change, some kind of reining in a little bit, but it's maybe not as much as you might hope for. The last scene, the last picture is him kind of being a bit of a show off and an idiot on the back of his horse, and just to show that the fat man could still ride and
could jump over a fence.
Yeah, and you kind of want to say, Rooster, have you learned nothing? But that's what he did. But I'm kind of with you there. I do think there was some change taking place in him as a character, and probably her as well.
Yeah.
Okay. The only other thing that I was going to run by you, here's my theory, that I think that although Maddie's major focus was justice and not revenge, I think clearly it was personal. And when she accidentally did shoot her dad's killer, she was not upset about that. She was kind of happy about that. And then after doing that, she falls into the pit with the snake. And while she's trapped there, then the guy, her dad's killer, falls into the same pit, dead. So for a little while, it's Maddie and the man she had been hunting, and they're both at the bottom of a pit with a deadly snake that's going to kill them. And what I'm asking you, is that metaphorical then? Did her hatred for the man basically make her the same as him? They both wind up in the pit, so to speak, and she winds up being bit by the snake, and there's biblical symbolism in that. And, am I stretching it too far, or is that a valid symbol?
Well, you did wake up in the middle of the night.
Right, it struck me in the middle of the night.
I don't know.
You're not buying it right away?
You're going to have to twist my arm a little bit, maybe.
No.
I don't know.
No, because then we'll get the whole domestic violence thing again.
Again. Oh, my. So, the guy winds up in the pit because the other guy shoots him and he falls in.
Right.
She winds up in the pit because the guy pushes her in the pit.
Right.
Or she's going after something. I really don't remember exactly why she got in there.
Or is the recoil of the gun? She tried to shoot him again. And
did she try to shoot him again?
I think
Maybe so. But she shot him to begin with the first time because...
It was a bit of a misfire.
Well, no, I think she felt like her life was in danger. And so she shot at him because he was coming towards her with a rifle.
Yeah.
And she shot him. And he was like, wow, I didn't think you were going to shoot me. Why'd you shoot me? Well, yeah, I'm going to shoot you. I think she did what was right to do. You shouldn't.
Yeah.
You should not defend
yourself. She's allowed to defend herself.
So,
yeah.
I don't see that as revenge. I just see that as I'm going to protect myself. and I have a gun and I'm going to use it. And so there's nothing wrong with that. It wasn't just like, oh, there you are, I'm going to shoot you.
Okay, so basically you're out on the snake pit symbolism then.
I think you could do some symbolism there, but I wouldn't say. Now tell me again, what's the snake pit thing?
Well, the pit itself represents death and destruction, and then it's symbolic that there's a snake in there, and it really does get her after she's been trying to kill this guy that killed her dad, and just there's a symmetry there that she's now on a quest to kill this guy that killed her dad, and they're both there lying in the same pit. And then it's her relationship with Rooster then that winds up rescuing her, just like she kind of rescued him through their relationship. Oh, come on. That's top shelf. That's top shelf symbolism right there.
Well, there's some symbolism, all right. There's some stuff there. Yeah.
I don't even know what to say. I thought that was a home run right out of the box.
Well, I can kind of see what you're saying. Is it a stretch? Are you stretching for these things? Are you reaching? You know, what about the guy who winds up dying? He's really the one that gets him out of the pit. It's not Rooster. So what about him? How does he fit into all this? He was willing to sacrifice himself.
No, see, the border of the symbolism is within the pit itself. Things
but
outside
Rooster was stuck in there himself because
he wasn't stuck.
He couldn't get her out.
He came down with the rope and all that.
Yeah, but her arm was broken. She had the snake bite. He couldn't get her out.
Well, he had help, but...
Well, I just didn't know how far the symbolism stretched.
To the border of the pit. It doesn't matter.
The border of the pit.
It doesn't matter who's on the top.
Well, I could go with the symbolism that there is the pit. There's the two people in there. It's a dangerous place full of death.
Yeah.
And one of them thinks that they're alive. You know, I could see that being kind of relational to our society now, that, you know, that pit is there. There's death all around you, but you'd think, well, I'm okay. There's death everywhere else, but I'm okay. And the reality is, no, don't you see where you're at? You're not okay. You're as much trouble as this dead body that's just right here next to you.
Oh, boy, you're stretching the symbolism way beyond what I was stretching it.
But, you know, there was that skeleton in there from somebody else who had got thrown in the pit or died or whatever. So.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, man. So my symbolism was thin. And yours that stretches it more.
Well,
your symbolism covers the whole face of the earth.
It's just more encompassing because, well, do you agree or do you not agree?
Oh, of course I agree.
Well, of course you do. No, for real.
Well, I like my symbolism better, but because mine's more specific. She was willing to become a killer just like that other guy and wound up in a pit with that guy. Have you been drinking?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, we should put an end to this, I guess.
No more symbolism.
No more symbolism. The last point of the covenant, very quickly, is succession and how does it look like these things will continue. And I think Maddie doesn't anticipate having her own family, and Rooster anticipates that she will. Mm-hmm. And in that instance, I think Rooster was probably right. She just, she hasn't met the right guy, but...
Well, she's a very unusual girl.
She is unusual.
And it would take someone special
right.
to be the husband that she would need.
Right.
And I think that might be hard because she is so outspoken, and I think she's going to scare away people.
But she does seem like the type if she does remain single, she's probably not gonna sit at home and cry about that or be terribly upset.
I don't see her being,
She has gifts and talents that she's...
Yeah. And it was really kind of sad because I think she was getting soft on the Texas Ranger guy. I think she was softening towards him, and then there he went and got his head cracked open and died.
Right.
There could have been something there, and maybe that's what she was thinking, that maybe that guy could have been, but now he's not, and so I'll just.
Yeah. If you can't have Glenn Campbell, then
you can't have old beefcake.
The beefcake. It's all bets off. Then.
Yeah, but I don't know. And then her dad's not there anymore, and so I think that's always hard on a girl too, to not have their dad around. But maybe she was the brains of the operation there, and she just has too much work to do.
That's the impression I got. Yeah. She was telling her dad how to run things before he left. And he may have been indulging her a little bit.
Yeah, I think probably so.
All right, True Grit.
Wasn't so bad.
Not so bad. I think overall I'd probably give it a high B+.
Yeah, so we're in agreement.
Yeah, we're in agreement there.
That's good.
We have many other things to hash out.
Well, we don't always have to agree.
Yeah, that's right. That's True Grit, and I think the one thing that I came away with is you can have a movie, a Western or any other kind of genre that is really pretty heavy on worldview content and without having to be preachy. And I really thought that this movie accomplished that and kind of maybe points the way for Christians, or at least gives some good examples to take a look at.
Yeah, and it wasn't a bad movie. There wasn't language. There wasn't.
Right, and it was funny. It had its.
Yeah,
it had a lot of funny
some
parts.
Comedic parts, and there wasn't any questionable scenes with clothing or not with clothing, and it was just, that was kind of refreshing that you didn't have to be like, oh, what was that? And
right.
And oh my goodness, why are they talking like that? And
right.
she was sharp-witted, and she got her meaning across clearly and succinctly without having to resort to use language that's derogatory.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. All right, so we recommend that, I think. Next week, we found a classic movie on Netflix, and we're gonna, our plan, Lord willing, is to Kill a Mockingbird.
Dun, dun, dun.
If y'all want to watch that before our podcast comes on, you'll be able to follow along. All right, so signing off from Worldview Media Podcast. We'll see you next week. Until then, go take dominion in the world of arts and entertainment for the sake of Jesus. Amen. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Worldview Media Podcast. Please visit reconstructionistradio.com to check out the other podcasts in our network and to download our free audiobooks.